Welcome back to Dumbest in the Room. My guest today is Josh Plasse. He's a writer, actor, producer. Josh, thanks for coming.
You're very welcome, man. Excited to be here.
So we went to high school together. Did we go to, I don't think we went to middle school together, did we?
No, I went to a couple of different middle schools,
Yeah.
but I met you in the 9th grade.
Yeah? Cox High School, man.
Represent.
And Josh is dating my cousin. How long have you guys been together?
Almost 13 years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
13 years.
We also met in 9th grade, actually.
Wow.
Kirsten and I.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So I knew you as kind of a football player, like sporty kind of guy. I would not have pegged you as being an actor, writer, producer. So kind of give me a background on your sports and everything, and before we get into the acting, writing, and producing.
Yeah, on sports. I obviously played football at Cox High School, which was a lot of fun. I played growing up my whole life. My dad, as I think I told you before, was in the teams, so I was gearing up to do that. So I started running, swimming, shooting, and all that fun stuff. And I started boxing. And so after football ended in, I think, 12th grade, I was 18, so in 12th grade, I started taking boxing very seriously. And I know you remember I went and I did Golden Gloves down in Virginia, which is like a tri-state tournament with North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. And I won that, and then I just got really heavily involved with boxing, really loved it, and kind of flipped my sports switch to boxing after football because I wasn't quite tall enough to play D1 or good enough.
So from boxing, you went to... Did you go to Richmond first or LA first?
I did. I went to Richmond first. After boxing, I went to VCU, Virginia Commonwealth, and I studied Homeland Security and Criminal Justice. And I had a buddy there, actually, who was in the theater, which is how the whole thing started for me. Do you remember Adam Valentine?
Yeah, I do.
From high school?
Yeah, I don't know if he would remember me, but I remember him.
He would remember you. He would remember you. He's a good guy. So he went to VCU with me. We were roommates freshman year. And basically, I was just super serious with everything. I was still boxing, like I said, running, swimming, shooting, all that stuff. And he was super nonchalant. And I was like, dude, why are you always so happy all the time? Because I was just like, I was doing the whole thing. And he was like, honestly, man, it's the theater. And I was like, wow. So he hooked me up with his coach at the time, his acting coach named Joseph Obermuller, who is to this day one of the greatest human beings on the planet. Amazing guy. He took me in to his class, and we started doing privates together just to kind of like get me out of my shell and stop being so serious as a human being / college kid. And I ended up falling in love with it and kind of went from there. He hooked me up with a couple of auditions in Richmond, which there was no competition at all, so we were able to do well, and then I just kind of fell in love. So,
before Richmond, you had no inkling of ever acting or anything?
None. No.
Until Adam Valentine.
Yeah. Until Adam Valentine.
That's a big jump. So to take that jump, what was going through your head to go from, you said, cybersecurity and
Homeland
Security?
SEAL teams is what it was going to
be.
Yeah, that's what my dad did, and that's what most of my buddies were doing. So at the time, Homeland Security.
Security.
Criminal justice. Cybersecurity is a part of that.
Gotcha.
Okay. But yeah, no, it's a good question, man. Very, very long story short, once I had started the classes there and started enjoying myself with Joseph's class and his teachings, I was like, oh, I kind of like this acting thing. I slowly was getting rid of my college guy shell and tough guy, whatever. And I started saying, okay, well, let's see what happens. So I got an agent here named Sylvia Hudson, who's definitely like the biggest Virginia agent. She's really amazing as well. Yeah. Shout out to Hudson. And basically what was going through my head actually was a couple of things. The two that stick out to me now were that in my life, it's always just been about purpose and about what I'm trying to do and why, more importantly, I'm trying to do it. And so for me, I wanted to be in the teams because I thought that was going to be how I would make the biggest difference in the world, which those guys, they're unbelievable. Anybody who serves in this country is, first and foremost in my heart. But for me, at the time, I was talking with Joe, with Adam, and other people, and I just started feeling this kind of pull in my heart to go into the industry. And I sort of looked at what everyone was doing out there at a high level, like Dwayne Johnson, for example, who has such a pool on so many different avenues of life. And I just thought, like, if you could create that sort of platform to speak from and sort of preach to other people and hopefully serve as an example, then you can really make a serious change. And so for me, at the time, it was a really, really hard decision because I, just complete left turn. Yeah. My grandpa was CIA, my dad was a SEAL, so like my whole bloodline was going to do one of those things. So when I was like, Dad, I'm going to be an actor, he was like, But yeah, man. So basically, the long story short, what was going through my head was a little bit of fear, but I really felt, I mean, you know, I'm a religious guy, and I really felt that God was calling me out to California to just do something different. I just felt that purpose in my heart. And when you know, you know. And ironically, actually, I don't think I've ever told too many people this, but I was sitting with Joseph Obermuller to this day. We were sitting in Richmond, and we were talking about it, and he told me something that's very interesting, because we were deciding. I was like, I don't know what to do. I feel torn. I don't know if I should go into the military or if I should go out and try and chase his dream. And he was like, well, Washington is power, but Hollywood is influence. And I think that that's never been more true than today, with the power of both the media, social media, commentary, TV, everything you're watching. It's incredibly influential. And so we kind of had this deep-hearted discussion together about, hey, which one of these careers is going to be more lucrative for your purpose? Where do you feel like you're being called? And I kid you not, on everything, I felt this kind of pull from my heart. Like, I just felt like I was being pulled out to Hollywood. And we looked up, and we were on the corner of Hope and Grace Street in Richmond. I was like, oh, man. So I just made my decision right there.
So how much time did you spend acting in Richmond before going out to?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like 5 months.
Really?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you really like went in cold, and I mean, you've been pretty successful.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, I went in very cold, which was scary. I didn't know anybody out there. My mom bought me a book called The Wallace Audition Technique, which is a great book. So shout out to Craig Wallace. He's the man. I didn't know anybody, but I emailed him before I went out to Los Angeles, and I was like, hey, Craig, you know, I've read your book. I'm a big fan of your work. I had seen a few of his workshops online and seen some of his teachings. He published some stuff. I think he has 3 books now. And so I went out to Santa Monica knowing no one, literally just me and Kirsten, actually. Kirsten moved out with me. And I walked straight to this guy's front door and knocked on it at his acting class. And he basically took me under his wing. And from there, like, the ball just
The guy
rolled.
that wrote the book?
The guy who wrote the book.
Wow.
Yeah, Craig Wallace.
That's
yeah,
awesome, dude.
Yeah, he's the man.
He wasn't like, I mean, he was just open. You went to his door and he was cool with it?
Totally. Like, totally. I mean,
That's awesome.
You know, it was a class, so ultimately I had to pay him. So you're not that great, Craig. But no, he's the best, man. But yeah, no, he just welcomed me with wide open arms and was kind of my first person that I knew there. You know what I mean? Because I didn't, like you said, I knew no one. I knew nothing. I was not a good actor. I had made it to the final round of a Pizza Hut commercial in Richmond, Virginia, and then I was totally exposed for having no talent because I had this like, so it was a national commercial. It was huge. It paid very well. It came down to me and a couple other guys. And basically what had happened is once I got to that final round, I had only made it through the preliminary rounds because I had no fear, but I wasn't good. So I was just doing it. I was being very organic and natural like this because I didn't know what acting was. So I didn't know how to make choices. So I would literally just do this. And they're like, this guy's genius. I was like, no, no, I'm not. And I got there and the director saw my first take and tried to give me direction. He's like, great, now do it this way. And I was like, I couldn't do it at all.
Do you remember what the direction was?
I don't, man. It was something ridiculous with the pizza. But I couldn't do it. And I remember leaving there and being like, not only do I was exposed. I remember leaving that audition and being like, okay. And it was good though, because it like fueled that fire for me where it was like, there are so many layers to this and it is a challenge and I clearly have so much work to do that I left there. And Sylvia Hudson, actually, to pat her on the back, was like, Josh, because I had booked a couple of things here, which there's not crazy competition in Virginia. She herself, like selflessly was like, hey, you're doing really well and you should go to Los Angeles right now, like ASAP. Don't miss the window. And to this, I know. And to this day, I was like, dude, good for her.
Dude, yeah, she pushed you in the right direction for sure.
Really, yeah.
Okay, so now you gotta go back for a Pizza Hut commercial. I think.
I think
just
so
to see how far you can make it.
Just to see how far I can make it, right? I know. I would love. I wish to this day that I knew who was casting that out of Richmond, who the director was, and who got involved in that, because that was such a life altering experience for me, and it was such a small thing to them. They probably saw hundreds of people for the commercial.
Yeah.
And we made it to the last round, sure, but whoever casted that cast 30 commercials a year probably.
Yeah.
So it's nothing to her. But in my life, it was like such a defining moment for me. I would love to know who casted that. Just go back and shake their hand.
That's funny, dude.
Right.
All right. So you move out to California.
Yeah.
You knock on this guy's door.
Yeah.
Where were you living?
Right. We were in Santa Monica.
Okay.
Santa Monica. I was on 11th Street and Arizona, I think, are the crossroads. It's kind of. Have you been out there?
Yeah, but I don't know the streets like
Right. It's like, you know where the promenade is? Santa Monica Promenade?
Yeah.
It's like right next to that.
that. Gotcha.
Yeah, it was really nice. We got lucky.
Are you still friends with Alex Saxon?
Oh yeah, big time.
Was he out there at that point, or because
No.
he's out there now,
He's out there now. Yeah.
but not at that time. So you really didn't know anybody,
I knew literally no one, man. Yeah, it was me and Kirsten going out there to the Wolves.
and you just packed up and drove, I assume.
Packed up and drove. And another semi-funny story is on the way. We stopped in Amarillo, Texas, and we ate at this kind of off the beaten path butchery, more or less. And 2 days later, the second day we were in Los Angeles, I got so sick that I ended up having to go to the ICU with E. coli for literally, I think it was, gosh, I'd have to go back and double check, but I was in the ICU for multiple days. I lost like 19 pounds. It was awful. And so I was like, great, welcome to Los Angeles.
Because of the food in Texas?
Because of the food in Texas. That's what
Wow.
I love Texas, but that was a bad experience. Yes.
All right. So knock on the guy's door.
Yep.
What's next?
Knocked on the guy's door. He, like I said, he took me in with open arms, got started in the class, realized I sucked. It was like, oh, wow, this is the real deal. Because everybody there was great. And the one thing that I did have going for me was, and I think a lot of people who are successful in Hollywood have this, which is an athletic mentality, that mindset of competitiveness that a lot of artists don't have. Like specific artists generally start off a bit better at the craft, but it's show business, not just show. Business is twice as long as show, and they don't usually have that killer instinct for the business. At least I found a lot of them do, but certainly not most of them. So for me, I went to Craig and I was like, look, dude, the way I see it, metaphorically speaking, everybody here is driving 100 miles an hour. So I got to drive 200 miles an hour because everybody there is truly hustling and like working very, very hard. And you get to a place where, you know, you come from a small town or whatever, and everybody pats you on the back and says, you're great and you're this. And then you get to LA and it's like, you're nothing. So is everybody else, you know? So I told Craig, I was like, I'm willing to drive that fast, and I want you to put me in the best class you can put me in right now and just expose me. And he did. And like he put me in with all of his best actors. And then from there I went out, I met another gentleman named Patrick Day, who ran the Young Actor Space at the time, which he still runs out in Van Nuys. Another amazing gentleman. Just a great guy. He was actually in my short film, Calico Queens. He's awesome. And so I met him right after that. He put me in class, and he introduced me to my manager, Omar Mayed.
Sweet.
Yeah.
What was the first gig you booked?
Criminal Minds.
Criminal Minds?
Criminal Minds. Yeah, man. I had like 3 lines, and then I got killed at the dinner table.
I think I remember seeing that.
Do you?
I think so, dude.
It was fun. I had many scenes, but yeah, it was Criminal Minds. It's crazy.
And what is it like when you, on your first set? I mean, you're an acting class is one thing, but when you're around all the lights and the cameras,
yeah,
the crew, I mean, I assume at Criminal Minds, the crew is probably pretty big, right?
Huge. I don't remember the exact count, but I mean, it was a lot of people. Yeah. And that wasn't a multi-camera set, but sometimes there are. And the major difference is that time is money. So when you get on a set like that, you need to nail it. You know, you're getting 2 shots at max. Then it's not like they're going to fire you on the day if you're already there when you're a co-star. But you need to do well. Time is money, you know what I mean? And so that's kind of the difference there. In acting class, you're there to explore and to learn. And you're kind of, in a way, you are there to fail. Like, you want to fail, actually, because failure is going to expose and make you learn things. Whereas when you're on set, it's pretty crazy. And on a show like that, where there are major celebrities within the cast and major guest stars, it's pretty intimidating.
Yeah, I bet, dude. I bet.
Yeah.
So, I mean, talk more about that. I mean, talk more about the intimidation and...
Yeah. I mean, I think it's hard because, again, coming from an athletic background with sports and things, it's like you can always rely on your ability because it's black and white. It's tangible. It's like you are this good or you are not. And you can show that either in the ring or in the ring, for example, it's going to be really quickly. You know, it's going to happen really quick. Like you are going to be better or you are going to be worse than the gentleman across from you. Mm-hmm. Whereas in acting, it's all subjective. There's no black and white. And so it makes it much harder because everybody has imposter syndrome once you're starting. And that starts to go away once you realize what good work is. But at first, everybody has imposter syndrome. So you get there and it's like, okay, I'm gonna you only have a few lines, for example. So I'm gonna say these first 3 lines and I'm gonna say them this way, or I'm gonna do it like this and make these choices and establish these relationships. And you're in your head the whole time because you're like, what if the director doesn't like it?
Yeah.
And then there's Video Village over here where there's 20 people who are all just incredibly high up in the industry, you know, well-known producers, well-known EPs, etc. And they're all watching you. And it's actually hard sometimes when you come in with a few lines because if you're like a good guest star like on iCarly, you have tons of dialogue, so you have time to establish yourself, and people know like, okay, he can act. Whereas when you only have a few lines, it's like if you do them in a manner in which somebody disagrees with, you're like, oh, they're gonna think I suck. So you get that imposter syndrome, and it is fearful. But ultimately, you just gotta swing, just gotta step up, be really confident in what you do, and swing it 100%. And usually, at that level, if you're swinging 100% and you're doing it really confidently, even if it's not the right choice, it'll be a good choice, and they'll redirect you. You'll get to do it again.
Interesting, man. Like, I've never thought of it the way you're talking about it with the athletic mindset and the 200 mile an hour versus the 100 mile an hour thing. That's very insightful.
Thanks, man. Yeah, no, it's different. It really is. And I'll tell you, I believe, for one, at least in my group out there, most of the people who really make it and are really successful, they adapt to something like that. They adapt to similar mentality, and they either came from sports or they came from something else that's competitive, because it's, dude, the statistics on actually making it as a successful actor are mind-boggling. I mean, it's legitimately, I think it's the hardest career in the world.
Yeah.
I use a good metaphor a lot, actually, which is like, I try to compare it to the NFL, which is saying, okay, every kid in America wants to play in the NFL. They all want to be when you grow up, you want to play big sports, you want to be a big shot, you're watching Tom Brady or whoever, and you're like, I want to do that, right? Yeah. Every kid in America. But there are 32 starting NFL quarterbacks, okay, on a given Sunday. So, and there's people behind them, but there's 32 starting quarterbacks. And I always say, okay, name me 32 actors who are in your category. And people are like, I can't. I can name you 10, 12 at most, right? And then you have to think, okay, so if you can't even name 32, and you know how hard it is to get in the NFL, again, another statistical anomaly, one of the hardest things to do. But if you think about acting, it's not just America. The NFL, generally speaking, it's Americans. Nobody else is coming in here. I mean, people will come to play, but it's very rare. With acting, you're getting self-tapes from the Brits, from Australia. You're competing with guys in New Zealand. You're competing across the world for those selective spots. And at this time, in this day and age, where it's so specific, it's a lot less, obviously talent wins in the end of the day, but like, it's so specific now where you can be the best. Like Amy Adams has a really great story about how many auditions she went through and was getting there and was always incredibly good, but never quite hit it. And one day a casting director was like, no, you're casting her or I'm walking off the project. Jeez. Because it's so specific. It's like, she was great, but wasn't necessarily right for that role. And that happens a lot today to me and to other friends, where it's like, you'll get feedback from casting. They'll say, God, that was an amazing audition, great tape, he was really good, but ultimately this guy looks a little bit more like the mom who we've already casted. You're done.
Yeah.
And so it's like when you open the pool up to everybody around the world sending in self-tapes, the odds that you are more right for a part than the guy next to you who is equally talented, equally handsome, equally driven, equally whatever, it's hard, dude.
Yeah. Talk about that, the not getting casted thing. Because I mean, for every project you've been cast in, how many have you not been cast in?
Oh man, a lot. That's a great question. I would say for everything that I have been casted in, probably 30 that I haven't been casted in.
Wow.
Yeah, and I've been cast at this point in like 20 different projects. So I'd say I've auditioned for a decent amount of things. And it sucks because before COVID, obviously, you drive there and you drive back. And while that sounds silly, in Los Angeles, it's an hour drive there to an audition on a given day. I mean, especially if you're on the west side, which is where me and most of my friends are. So you drive an hour in just bumper to bumper traffic. And when you're starting out, you're just desperate for co-stars, like Criminal Minds or things like that. So you'll drive an hour to go audition to say 2 lines.
Yeah.
Not get it. Drive back an hour sitting there just pissed off in traffic and just angry at life, crying, driving home. So it's hard, man. It's an unbelievably brutal industry in every way.
Kind of unrelated, but you mentioned traffic. I mean, you have these appointments for these auditions, right? So do they just know people are going to be late, or do you just have to is that part of the 200 miles an hour? Like, I'm going to leave 3 hours early and
100%. You better be there on time. Yeah. And now people do show up late. And then some people, it's such a weird thing, man. Again, it's all subjective. So I know actors who are intentionally late, which I think is the stupidest idea.
Was it like make them stand out in a weird way?
They think that it makes them this mysterious enigma, but the reality of the situation is you just look unprofessional. Yeah. So yes, you should be there early and ready. And like for me, for example, in Santa Monica, this is also off topic, but it is potent. If someone's moving out to LA, get ready for this. It's like if you leave from 9 a.m. up until about 1 p.m., you can make it to any audition on the east side pretty easily, like 30 minutes. If you leave after 1 p.m., it's literally an hour difference, legitimately. So like for me, I would, if I have an audition, which was, 3 days a week, if you're lucky, you get up and your day is built around that. You should leave, 2 or 3 hours earlier, go to a coffee shop, set up shop, prepare, do your thing, audition, and then sprint back just to hope to beat the traffic on the way home. It was brutal. COVID obviously changed that, but yeah, it was brutal for a while.
Talk about how COVID changed it. Because I know, we've worked together. We've taped self-tapes.
We have.
Is that more common now with COVID?
Oh, it's all it is. Yeah. They're starting to come back. And I think in-person auditions will ultimately make a huge comeback over the next couple of years. But yeah, right now it's all self-tapes, man. Everything is self-tape. You'll get a huge test or, a network test, studio test, or maybe you'll get a major producer callback that could potentially be in person right now, but it's incredibly rare. And if you do, there's going to be significantly less people in that room than there would have been before. They're all going to be in masks, and even that is a very rare thing right now. Yeah, generally speaking, it's just tapes. And like for this last movie I just did in Atlanta, it was a tape and then a callback tape, meaning the CD will give you notes on what to do. Hey, do it this way. Retape, send that tape. Then the director watched it, gave me her notes, retaped that again. So it's like going back in for callbacks, but literally just on self-tape.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. One of my favorite movies is La La Land. And they're kind of like the starving artists, whatever. Yes. And Emma Stone works as a barista.
100%.
Did you have to do any?
Oh, yeah, dude. Oh yeah, a big time. As of right before COVID, I finally stopped having to have a side job, just like financially speaking. But yeah, it took me 5 years to not have a side job, which is average. It takes people so much time. And I worked at a Spanish tapas restaurant for a very long time. Yeah, it was called Manchego. It was a great place, actually. Really lovely restaurant, great owner, all that good stuff. But I did a million other things, man, as well. When I'd been teaching boxing on the side steadily. So I have a very small pool of clients out there who will come to my house, or at the time, my little apartment gym, because I own a bunch of equipment. So I would set up bags and like TRXs and just fun stuff like that. There's a little weight rack out there, and I would bring clients over and just do like $35 to $65 per person, depending on how hard it is and what they're asking for, right? So I did that on the side, and now I actually have a self-tape studio in my place, which behooves me as an actor, and I'll bring people in and I'll just let them self-tape for an hourly rate, very cheap. But my side job for a very, very long time was the restaurant and was teaching boxing. Yeah, because when I first got out there, I actually finished up school there. So I was a full-time student, and I was with Patrick Day and Craig Wallace doing 2 acting classes and working at a restaurant on the side. So it was just brutal, like hustle, brutal. Yeah.
Boxing, obviously, it sounds like you're your own boss, but at the restaurant, when you have to go do an audition, are they pretty understanding about that?
My boss was always really cool. Yeah, his name was Ash. He was always really, really cool. In general, I would say no, they are not. It's hard. Like, you have to meet people within the restaurant who can cover for you and kind of do it back and forth. And there are tons of restaurants where, like, actors will literally go there knowing that other actors are there. And they're, like, on Melrose Avenue, for example. Every other restaurant, there are people there who are like, okay, I'm going to work here because the money is decent, but more importantly, 5 of my friends work there, and we can all just shuffle each other.
Yeah.
And, cover somebody's shift if you have to.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is it really like everybody out there is really trying to make it?
Oh, 1,000%.
I mean, the last time I went out there,
1,000%.
I was out there for a premiere, and like even the Uber driver was like talking about like he was in some show, but like they cut him.
Yeah.
They cut his scenes or something.
Oh man, that's brutal. It happened.
Yeah.
Yes. No, everybody is, dude. Everybody. I mean, obviously not literally everybody, but for the most part, yeah. In some form, it's everything. It's all things entertainment. It's not just acting. There are people who are aspiring musicians. There's everything behind the camera. All of your DPs out there, all of your directors, all of your writers. For every starving actor, for every 3 starving actors, there's probably a starving writer. It's really competitive, man. And then, you have everything else out there too. Now the tech world is emerging big time. Google just relocated. I don't know if you saw that, but Google's going to have a huge HQ. I'm not sure if it'll be their North American HQ, but a really big one right in the middle of Los Angeles now. They're doing a lot of other things. There's a military base. Elon Musk just relocated Tesla, but they had a place over there. So there are tons of other industries, obviously, that people are hustling in and doing their thing. But generally speaking, Los Angeles is, it's the place of dreamers.
Yeah. So your first gig you said was Criminal Minds.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you didn't even have to do like an indie student film.
No, yeah, no. I don't think I've ever done a student film that I think about it. In Los Angeles, at least. No, I don't think I have. I would have to think back, and I'm going to feel really bad if I haven't. I don't remember, but I have a terrible memory. Yeah, no, I don't think so, man. I think that was the first one, and yeah, no student kicks. I did a movie after that ironically comes out in October this year.
Wow.
Literally 6 years ago, we did this movie. So that's not true. 5 years ago, we did this movie, because there was a little bit of time in between. But other than that, no student films or anything.
Wow. Did you do any student films in Richmond?
I helped with a few, but I never was in any. No. I'm trying to think. No, never.
Wow. How does the scene in Richmond compare to LA? I mean, Richmond is like kind of Virginia's hub a little bit, but nowhere near.
Oh, no.
LA, right?
Incomparable. Yeah, incomparable. Richmond is fun because you kind of know everybody.
Yeah.
I felt like everybody knew one another within that little area, but no, it's really uncomparable. To be honest with you, Los Angeles there's really nothing to compare to it. Even New York, like if you actually go to New York and you live there and you chase your dreams there, from a pure acting standpoint and like what you're going to accomplish in your career there, yeah, it's massive. Yes, there's a ton there. It's not the same. I mean, it's heavily focused on Broadway and other things like that. And Los Angeles is just a different beast. I would argue that Atlanta is bigger than New York right now, and it's going to continue to be very soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, and even that doesn't necessarily compare to LA.
Jeez.
Yeah.
All right. So Criminal Minds, then the movie.
Yes.
What was after that?
Oh, man.
Can you name the movie since it's coming out in October?
There's No Such Thing as Vampires.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the first film I ever did in Los Angeles. And it actually is crushing it.
And how did that compare to, sorry, not to cut you off, but how did that compare to the TV set?
Oh, totally different, completely different world.
Yeah.
It was the director on There's No Such Thing as Vampires is like super, super savvy. So we didn't have a ton of money on that film. So he had to work around that and create, fun, interesting, unique ways to make things happen. Whereas on something like Criminal Minds, it's the exact opposite. They're just like, there's a problem, throw money at it. Here's a problem, throw money at it. Whereas for an independent feature, it's like, there's a problem, we have no money, so let's figure out how to make this work, So it's just very different. It's a much smaller crew. I think we had, 16, 17 people on that crew, which is not small per se comparatively. But yeah, maybe 50 or more on Criminal Minds. I really don't know.
Yeah.
It's been a long time, but probably more. I mean, the iCarly was another studio picture and their studio show, I should say. And we had at least, counting back, I would definitely see at least 40 people there every single day, maybe more.
Wow.
So Criminal Minds, it's been so long now, but I would have to recall and say there was more.
Okay, so back to the question I cut you off on answering.
Yeah,
so it was Criminal Minds, then No Such Thing as Vampires.
Yes.
And then what?
Gosh, man, I'd almost have to pull up my IMDb. I think after that, it was Feud for Ryan Murphy's show, which was an awesome show. I know I'm missing something. Criminal Minds. There's a couple in there. We would have to see, but I think it was Feud right after that. And then I did the order. It's the order that always.
You don't have to name all of them in order,
yes.
but I mean.
Yes, but roughly around there, it was Feud, and then it was Marvel's Runaways, and then it was American Horror Story, and then Grey's Anatomy. I think in that order, but there was little things in between.
I didn't know you were in American Horror Story, so these are like big things.
Yeah, dude, you gotta watch American Horror Story. Yeah. That was actually
that show always creeps me out.
Super scary, super weird, super weird. They got a new one coming out. Did you see that?
I saw something about it.
Yeah, American Horror Stories. My buddy's actually a series regular in that. But yes, I did that show, and I probably had like 10 lines in that one. It was very small, but I had scenes cut from that. And it was, again, it's similar to the Uber driver. A lot of times it has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
Just they shoot a lot and it comes from other things. So you tell everybody. And that's why, for me, like now I'm at a point, thankfully, where if something gets shot, it's probably going to be used because you're in a ton of scenes or whatever. Mm-hmm. But before, I would never tell anybody when I booked anything until I knew.
You still get paid even though you shot it.
Yeah, you still get paid. Exactly.
Yeah.
But I would always wait. I'd be like, I'm not saying anything until this film comes out or this show comes out, and I know I'm in it because they will totally cut people out.
Talk about Grey's Anatomy because that's like a huge. I mean, that's got a huge following. Yeah, so what was it like to get? Talk about like getting the audition all the way through production.
So fun, dude. One of the most fun times ever. Got the audition. Again, this was also a little while ago, but to the best of my recollection, got the audition. obviously worked it like a madman. I have a 12-hour rule, which I'm trying to fluctuate a little bit with these days, but generally speaking, I'll put 12 hours into every audition. And if I do less than that, I feel like I haven't done enough. And everybody has their own thing. I have actors who will refuse to do more than 2 hours because they think that any more than that, and it's like, you're in your head now, or you're over prepared, right? But for me, I've always had this 12-hour rule. It's just what I've done. I can get into that later. But I put my 12 hours in, prepared, felt good, and then I went to one of my good friends' house, Hilty, who is a good friend of mine and helps me tape and helps me, we just coach together and do stuff together. So she and I worked it, put it on tape, and then she lives right next to the studio where they're at. So went straight from there, having like just prepared. It was fresh in my mind. Went into the audition room and just crushed it because I had prepared. People don't do that. Like, you'd be shocked. Again, going back to the athletic thing and the artist versus the business mindset is like, people don't prepare a lot. It's shocking how many people will come into an audition with their sides, having not even really looked at it or done anything with it, and they're not connecting with you. They're not even looking at the CD. They're just like, it's just crazy, man. So went in and was really prepared, and I think that's why I booked it. And then, got the set, I don't know, 2 weeks later, and it was just awesome, man. It was really cool. If you've watched it, there's a scene where I'm in the car with the character's love interest, and it's raining outside, and that was my first experience with a rain machine, where it's like not actually raining. You're literally on the studio lot, and there's just ridiculous rain machines over you. And it's funny because you're sitting there, in this particular instance, we're in the car sitting next to each other, and it's raining all around us, right? And you see it, and there's mics right beside you, there's lights reflecting and all this stuff. But then you look out about 5 feet past the car, and all the crew is just like eating Snickers, and there's no rain, and they're just like doing their thing, like looking at no rain. You're just like, this is so weird. It's just such an interesting, weird job.
That's awesome. I mean, I would be amazed by. I've never seen a rain machine.
Very cool. They're very cool. I mean, there's different types of them, but this one was humongous. It was crazy. I mean, they were there. It was truly it was impressive. Yeah.
And you had kind of a big role in Grey's Anatomy. I mean, I think it was one episode at least, but
one episode guest star.
But it was a significant role because it was about one of the main characters who's still on the show.
Yeah.
Like her past.
Camille. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was her. So it was her as a young woman, and I was like her first love interest, who she has to break my heart because of her career, more or less. But yeah, it was fun, man. It was a big role in that episode. That was my first major guest star. That was my first, like, okay, we're trusting this guy with a lot of dialogue, a lot of stage and screen time, and it was just really awesome.
Do you keep in touch at all with people that you co-star with?
Oh yeah, definitely. On that show, a little bit. The girl who played, her name is Lily in real life. She and I are somewhat in touch, but not as much anymore. But generally speaking, on other shows, yeah, like you stay in touch. If you meet somebody, it's a little harder when it's like a one-day guest star or a co-star back in the day, because you're not there that long for people. But the Baxters, for example, where I did 36 episodes, I'm to this day best friends with probably 5 people from that show, because you're there all day, every day with these people.
Yeah.
It's like 12 to 14 hours per day on set. I think we did well over 90 days on that. And so you're just seeing these people all the time. And even iCarly, there are people there who I'm still friends with. And I only did 3 episodes on that show, but that was a full 3.5 weeks of work. So you see these people all the time. You stay friends with people. Movies as well, because movies, you're there for a long time. I'm really good friends with everybody from the film I just did in Atlanta. It's just like when you see somebody, it's weird. It's almost sad, because you get in like this little bubble in this world of seeing these people for literally all day. So and in the case of this movie, we shot long hours. We shot really long hours. And I think I told you this already, but a lot of them were night shoots. So you'd go in, you'd literally show up at like 3 p.m., 4 p.m. and get out at 7 a.m. So your whole, I can't remember what it is, your circadian rhythm or whatever it's called, is just totally, it's completely reversed and flip-flopped. But my point is, when you're doing something like that and you're with somebody else all day long, every day, you become really close. You stay in touch with them, and then it's kind of sad because you call rap, and it's like, oh, okay. All right, bye, everybody. Yeah. See you guys never, except for like 2 people. It's weird.
Yeah, that is weird.
Yeah.
In Grey's Anatomy, this is kind of a weird question, but did you have a kissing scene with the girl? So, I mean, is that weird to kiss somebody like platonically and then know that Kirsten's going to watch it?
Yeah, it's super weird. But the good thing is, it's always like it's the job and it's professional. And like in that instance, she was also seeing somebody else. So, and that's usually the case. It's very rare, at least in my experience, that it's like it's weird on set or there's anything there. It's like you said, it's platonic. It's for the job, and it's do it and you're done. And interestingly enough, people don't really look forward to it. Like everybody always looks at it like it's this like, oh, glamorous, like, oh, you get to do this and that, and like all these beautiful girls, and it's like, I don't really look forward to it. Like, it's kind of weird. And in my instance, at least, obviously being with the same woman for 13 years, like I don't like it. A, and B, it's like it's just for some people, at least, it's uncomfortable. And believe it or not, a lot of people who are celebrities will say the same thing. If you actually look at their interviews, they're like, it's kind of weird. There's 40 people around you. Now today they do a better job of that, where they close the set and they'll do like basically like a intimacy coordinators, I think what they're calling them right now. And it's a new job where they'll come in and they'll just like facilitate any scenes like that. And they'll close the set to where it's just the DP, director, sound, intimacy coordinator, and then the actors. And so that makes it a little bit better and easier. But before that, it's like, like on Grey's Anatomy, it's like, there's 50 crew eating those Snickers outside. And you guys are just like in the car doing your thing. It's weird.
I would definitely be taking a fear dump for sure. I couldn't do that.
Yeah, bro. Trust me, a lot of people do.
All right, so you said Grey's Anatomy was a few years ago.
Yes.
And I know also we'll get into iCarly because I know I was a big fan of iCarly when it was originally on. But I want to talk more right now about how did you get into writing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. So when I got to Los Angeles, like I said, I finished up college out there, and I transitioned into screenwriting. So I left Homeland Security, criminal justice, and I went into screenwriting and film studies in general. From there, I met a really awesome professor, actually. I'm trying to remember the exact origin story, but basically I met a great professor who I took writing course from, and the very same thing. It was like, I'm very eager to be exposed to things that I'm bad at, because then I just learn faster. And like, same with boxing. Like I even posted about that yesterday. I think it's just like, I don't want to get in the ring with somebody who I'm better than. I just won't do it. It's pointless to me. I mean, you can still learn. You can help the other person grow. But generally, I want to get my ass kicked. And that's the same kind of sort of ideology that you need to have with writing and with acting, is like, you want to be comparing yourself to the 0.1 percentile, or else you're wasting your time. Because statistically, as we said, that's the only people who are going to make it. So for writing, I had this college professor, and I gave him my first piece, and I was like, dude, like, please don't grade this like you're going to grade this. Like, grade this like I'm going to be a writer. And he was like, oh, okay, this sucks. I was like, okay, good deal. And he was like, yeah, this is one of the worst things I've ever read. I was like, oh, okay.
He had a field day with it, probably.
Just red marks everywhere, highlights, all this stuff. I was like, oh, good. And then after his class, I met this woman named Monique Matthews, who's amazing. She was my screenwriting professor after that. She's a successful screenwriter, producer, and she teaches at multiple colleges as well. And she and I had a really good relationship. So I kind of did a similar thing with her, where I was like, hey, please, like, just crush this. And then she ended up basically taking it a step further and was like, look, if you want to really take this seriously, do the work in class, write something outside of class, and pay me my hourly rate, and we'll go out and we'll do this. And like, I'll dissect this, and I'll show you what you're doing wrong and what you need to do to get better. Because ultimately, that's what I was asking for. I was like, these hour courses aren't enough. Like, I need more. And so she did that with me. So it started there with those professors, knowing for me that writing would A, make me a better actor, B, immerse me more in the industry, and C, it would give you sort of a plan B that isn't actually plan B. Like Will Smith says, you can't have a plan B in acting, and I completely agree. You cannot have a plan B. You just can't. You will fall to it. Like if I anywhere in my heart was like, I want to go back and get in the military, or I want to go home and open a gym or whatever, like you will do that. Period. That will be what it is. It is too hard in every way, shape, or form.
I feel seen.
Yeah. I feel seen. That dude, good. Like that's everybody does. That's the whole thing. Like I do too. I feel seen all the time, man. Inadequacies and fears, and they're real, and then you have to face them. And so for me, I saw writing as like, okay, this is a plan B if I don't make it as an actor, but it's not. It's the same thing. It's all relative. Yeah. And more importantly, there's a Christopher Nolan quote, which I will butcher, but essentially he says that no one would buy his first script, and no one would pay him to direct his first thing. So he wrote a script to direct. That's what he says. No one would pay him to direct his first thing, so he wrote a script basically to go and do it himself, right? And so for me, I was like, oh, well, okay, that's amazing and inspiring. You can write something that could potentially be your vehicle that you could be in. And at the time, I had no idea how hard that was. Like, to write something is one thing. To have somebody actually invest in it or put money into it to find the proper team and the actual channels to make that happen is a completely different reality. But so I started writing then, and me and a couple buddies wrote some things. I wrote Calico Queens as my first short, which was supposed to be a concept, which it worked out beautifully for basically a proof of concept for the full feature. And to this day, it was awesome. Like, people who watched that loved it. It was really good. It was time and money well spent. And
Danny Trejo,
Raphael Sabarge, we had awesome people in it. And we actually shot at Paramount Ranch, which burned down, which was super sad. We were one of the last things to shoot there.
Wow.
Yeah, really weird. But ultimately, my point is writing that and shooting and filming that. Once we're in a different place, we'll be able to make the real Calico Queens, the bigger one. But Westerns are just so hard. I mean, you need at least $8-9 million to do it properly and really get the proper cast and the setting that you need.
Yeah.
So point is, wrote Calico Queens and then wrote the feature for it and just started falling in love with it, dude. And ultimately, circling back to the beginning of the conversation, I moved out to LA with the goal and the purpose of creating a platform from which I could hopefully speak and inspire from. And so for me, that means that I'm going to try to make content, which means I'm going to need a production company. So from day one out there, I was aware that slowly but surely I'm going to have to be building this up. Mm-hmm. And that's going to require scripts. It's going to require knowledge. It's going to require the proper partners. So I started writing, and the first couple of things I wrote were obviously terrible. Threw them away, but I learned, and then got better and better and better until I actually sold something with my writing partner Jake Allen called Ride. Did you ever hear about that or see that?
I think you told me about it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything about it because I don't know what you wanted to say, but I think so.
No, totally. It's kind of left field here, so sorry, but sold that, and I'm in the talks right now to sell a couple of other things. We've optioned one more, and it's going well, man. So it's a really nice side gig, and then obviously I wrote Yucca Valley, which is what we're making right now. So that's kind of how it started, man. It was just two professors who I asked to beat me up, and they did, and that kind of gave me the fire. And for me, part of the 200-mile-an-hour thing actually is like, you can only act so many hours in a day. What else can you be doing? And a lot of people, you need to be watching, you need to be studying, watching roundtables, watching actual film, watching TV and television, and defining your brand and getting headshots and learning dialects and all of these different things that will make you, ultimately a better actor. But there's only so much of that you can do if you're truly hustling. Like, most people say, all right, I've worked for like 8 hours today, I'm good. Or I've worked for 9 hours, I'm good. You're not even in the top 20% out there. If you worked for 12 hours and you really worked for 12 hours, you might be in that top 1%, maybe. And you need to do that consistently every day, in my opinion. And so for me, that was like, okay, that's writing. That's finding and defining new relationships with potential producers, potential investors, potential, you name it, casting directors. And so that was a big part of writing for me. It was like, how else can I immerse myself in this world and get better holistically without just beating my head against the wall for acting?
You mentioned you sold your script. Mm-hmm. Talk about like the kind of shopping it around process. Yeah. How are you getting in front of people? How are you standing out? Mm-hmm. I think I had a professor that said something about the first 10 pages are make or break.
100%. Yeah, he's absolutely right. I would say even the first 5, honestly. Today, at least, the first 5 are do or die, your teaser, and then you need a really good draw. So this one was a little different. One of my writing partners, Jake, he's already a very successful actor and writer. His brother is an immensely successful director, producer, writer, everything. So they were both involved with this project, which helped us because his brother had a connection to a company in Georgia who was looking for sort of not necessarily wholesome or faith-based content, but just less gritty and dark stuff, right? And so we had this pilot that was about the rodeo and a family going through some financial troubles, and it's very interesting. But it was kind of right on the fence of like gritty and not gritty. So my point is, in shopping that around, we were like, all right, what's the home for this? Like, is this a Paramount Network kind of a show? Who do we know there? What kind of a show is this? Is this Netflix? Is this an HBO? They're all incredibly different. Everybody's like, oh yeah, I've got this show. It can be on all of those. No, it can't. No, it can't. Just no. And so we were trying to get specific with it, find the right demographic and target audience. And we ultimately settled on, hey, this is a really good opportunity with this Georgia company. And so Jake's brother set up a meeting with us. We had a number of Zooms with the basically CEO of the company who read it, liked it, and the process was really just giving us notes. She was like, hey, I think that if you can do this by this time, XYZ, then yes, we would buy this from you. Well, we would option it in that case. So she optioned it, and then one thing led to another, and you sold the script. So it's just really relational thing there. Generally speaking, if you're really good and at the top, you'll have a literary agent. That agent will pitch your content. You'll usually have a spec script or something that you can show as your work, and that'll just be pitched for you. So it's a little bit different, because at the time we didn't, no one had any literary rep. We just had good connections, and it was easy to do. But generally, it's not easy at all. Yeah, it's like the hardest thing ever, actually.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah,
I mean, you see in movies, producers have stacks and stacks of scripts.
Oh my God, yeah, stacks.
So just to get seen is like.
It's so hard, dude.
Yeah.
It's so hard. Yeah, it really is. And like I said about the one starving writer for every 3 actors, that's just that's not a real statistic. That's what I would guesstimate.
Yeah.
Could be far less, could be far more. But my point in saying that is that, like, for the stack of scripts you're alluding to, there are truly, millions of scripts out there. It's crazy. And a lot of them are good. But again, going back to the show business thing, like, I actually know personally a lot of people who are crazy talented at whatever it is they do, at whatever function of the industry, but writing specific, who will never sell a script, even though it's an unbelievable product, because they just don't know how. They don't have the business savvy to leverage themselves to go find an agent, to go find a producing partner, go find somebody. Or, like, a lot of people don't understand that sometimes you have to take a step back to take a few steps forward. And that might mean humbling yourself and saying, hey, I am not where you are, sir. Help me get there. What do I need to do? And it is suckling at the power teat at times, but you're doing it wisely and you're doing it strategically. And a lot of people aren't willing to do that, or they don't know where to start. Mm-hmm. So they've done all of this. It's really sad, actually, because it's the darkest industry in the world by far. They'll dedicate 8 years of their lives, literally, to become a good writer, and they are. Like, they finally are. 6 years later, they're writing really good content, really deep stuff, meaningful, powerful, purposeful. And they'll never see the light of day, because they don't have the other factors. They don't have the intuition, the ability, the drive to actually make it happen. And it's really sad, because ultimately, like you said, they'll have a side job for I don't know how long, until they decide to leave. And it's like, it's brutal, dude. It's really brutal. There's thousands of people like that. Same with acting. It's like, these are guys who, and women, who are incredibly talented at what they do, but more importantly, they might be incredibly talented at something else. Like, they could have been great lawyers, they could have been great, police officers, whatever it is they want to do out in life. And instead, they we talked about being exposed. It's like, they're like, no, I'm out here. I got to do this. Like, it's always that, like, it's two things. It's wanting to prove everybody. Like, if you have comparative mind and you're like, oh, I got to show everybody that I did this, you might drown out there, because you might never do it. And then secondly, it's this terrible thing of, like, it's always right there in acting and in writing in general. It's like, it really is always right there. It's such an interesting thing, man, because, like, from the guest star world we were just talking about to the series regular world, that jump is this close. And so when the fruit is just hanging out in front of you as an actor, you're just sitting there, and it's like, it's right there. If I just stay a little longer, fight a little harder. But man, it's so close and yet so far for some people.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing. So people end up wasting their whole lives out there in a way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very insightful.
Very dark. Very dark. Sorry.
No, you're good. Okay. So, all right. So let's kind of get more present. Yes. iCarly.
Okay.
iCarly is something that my brother was a huge fan of. Yeah. I kind of maybe closet was a big fan of it. But I liked it. It's a good show.
Yeah.
A lot of people liked it. We just talked about this a couple weeks ago. You said you never even watched it.
No.
But okay, so how do you talk about getting this script, this audition, and then being on the show?
Yeah. Okay. Actually, this is a good one, because it's going to be a perfect juxtaposition to what I just said. I just talked about my 12-hour rule. I was in Utah. Actually, ironically, coming back to the beginning of this conversation, I was in Utah with my buddy Dennis, who's a producer on Yucca Valley, and we were out there celebrating There's No Such Thing as Vampires. We were at a wonderful, basically film festival out there, and we were just going out to A, celebrate that, but B, take investment meetings for Yucca Valley. We were out there talking to a number of financiers and pitching and just trying to raise capital for the movie. And while we were out there, I get an email so I just got to a new agency at that point called Buckwald. And it was funny because it was really hard. I had to leave my prior agent to get there, which was sad and horrible and all these things. But ultimately, as soon as I signed with Buckwald, like, the 4th audition they sent me was iCarly. And I was in Utah driving. I got this audition, and my agent was like, hey, man, this is due tomorrow. And that I had that night, I had an investor meeting that day, something else that I can't remember, something else midday. And then I had the celebration for There's No Such Thing as Vampires that night, basically. And so I was like, dude, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And so contrary to my 12-hour rule, I was like, all right, I'm going to do the exact opposite. I was like, I'm going to get off book on this barely and just completely improv and swing this thing and see what I can do. And I found a guy there, this really amazing guy who was at the festival. He was actually doing still photography. And I was like, dude, do you have a camera? He was like, yeah. I was like, would you by chance help me audition for something tomorrow? And, to this, actually, I might hypothetically owe that guy money. I'm glad I just brought this up because I was like, if I book this dude, I'll give you 5% of it. And he was like, no. But now that I think about it, I should pay that guy 5%. And so it really was, dude. I know. I was like, oh, man. So he brings me, he's like, hey, my daughter is actually an aspiring actress. And in the scene was the audition scene was a romantic comedy scene with Carly, obviously. And so he was like, she's a female reader. Will that be better? I was like, totally. Yeah, I'd love that. So she comes and I barely got off book on it. And the next morning, because we were ahead, we were in mountain time. It was due technically the evening before, but I was like, hey, dude, can I shoot this in the morning? Like, please. Or the night before, excuse me. He was like, yeah, shoot it before. Just get it before 9 a.m. Pacific time. So I shot it super early with them, sent it. And it was like this weird thing, man, where I was in the car on the way to another investor meeting with Dennis. He was driving, and I was literally cutting the audition on my phone on iMovie, just like getting it ready. And I kid you not, bro, this is how it goes. I was sitting there thinking in my head, this sucks. I was like, God, this audition is trash, dude. I was like, I can't believe I'm going to send my new agency this audition. Like, I was like, it's just not good. It wasn't bad. And objectively, it was good, but it wasn't like the level that I wanted. And so I sent it in. And immediately I got a response from my agent. He was like, best tape I've seen in months. I was like, what are you watching, bro? I was like, no. And then I went back and rewatched it. And I was like, oh, yeah, all right. I guess I was being too hard on myself. Literally that night was the final closing ceremony for awards at this film festival. And we were sitting out there, dude. It was like one of the best moments of my life. We were sitting there. No Such Thing as Vampires. The director had just won an award for scoring. He also scored the film. And so I went up and like accepted on his behalf, and like they were live streaming in. So it was just this wonderful night. Everybody was drinking. It was a great celebration. And I sit down in the seats and I get a text from my manager and my agent both just saying like, you booked iCarly. And literally right as that happened, I got another audition for 2 other big shows. And I was like, oh my God. And it was just like this wonderful elation, like this elated moment. And so booked the show, drove all the way back home from Utah with Dennis. And actually, no, Dennis flew out. I drove home by myself, which was a really good drive. I like driving by myself. And so anyways, I booked it then. And then basically, I think I had 2.
Was this 2020 or 2019?
2020. This is really recent. Oh, really recent. No, this was 2021. It's 2021.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Dude, they turned around iCarly fast.
Jeez.
This was during COVID, full on. I got this audition 5 months ago. This was like really recent, actually.
Wow.
Yeah. Maybe 6 months ago. I'd have to look back at it, but let's see. June. Dude, yeah, no, like less than that. Yeah.
Wow.
I got this audition like 4 months ago. Yeah, that's how fast it happens. And but I was on the back end of iCarly. I was in the final 3 episodes, so they had already released a couple of the episodes, and it was like a weekly thing, and they were doing pumping them out weekly and just cutting on the spot. So got the audition, did the opposite effect. Literally, I think I had 2 weeks, man, like 2 weeks, and then I had to drive home. Knew I was filming it, and it's every day on Paramount, so it was awesome, dude. It was magical. And that set, to answer the next question, was like, it was just really, really incredible, dude. Really one of the best experiences I've ever had. It's multi-camera comedy, so there's 4 major cameras just at all times, and the whole thing is a soundstage everywhere you go.
It's not in front of a live audience, right?
No.
Okay.
It would have been had COVID not been a thing. So instead, they just do a laugh track and all that stuff.
Live or in post?
No, both, actually. Primarily in post, but there was one time when they had attempted it live, and it was a not thing. But yes, primarily in post. So you get there, dude, and it's like, it's so weird because it's the only multi-camera comedy I've ever done. And I think I did pretty well. You tell me.
No, it was really good.
I mean, people responded well. But for me, like, this is the best acting. If you can be on camera just doing this, you're doing really good work, right? And that show, it's just, and like, the director actually had to tell me one time, he was like, dude, he was like, look, I promise you're a really good actor. He was like, stop being a good actor. He was like, make this bigger. He legitimately actually said that to me, Nathan Kress. I was like, okay, that's hilarious, dude. He was like, be bigger, just have more fun. And it's true.
Freddie.
Freddie
directed your episode.
He directed my episode. Nathan Kress. Yeah, he literally he told me that. He was like, dude, be bigger. It was great direction. Now, he was absolutely right. He's a genius, obviously. And so it's just different, man. And the whole thing is on stage. So it's like all the cameras are on one side of you. Whereas usually it's like an over the shoulder shot, maybe there's a floater or a room or somewhere and you're doing the scene, right? This is like 4 cameras, hit your mark, do your thing. It's all on stage. So it's just different. It was weird, but it was so much fun. Literally, I would say it was the most fun I've had on set, maybe ever.
What's it like working with, Miranda Cosgrove, I think, is our age.
Yeah.
So
yeah, just a little bit older.
I mean, she's been in the business for a long time.
Crushing.
And you've been in for not as long. So what is it like to share scenes with somebody who's been there, done that, and you're a relative newcomer?
Yeah. Oh, dude. Yeah.
I say relative. I mean, you've been in it for
you're right.
a while
totally.
now, but
totally. No, you're right. I mean, compared to her, absolutely a newcomer. It was awesome. It was really cool, man. It was like, I don't even really know how to give the best answer to that. I think it was just really fun and really cool. And even though I hadn't watched the show growing up, I knew who she was, and I knew about the show, and I knew how big it was.
Did you watch Drake and Josh?
I didn't watch really anything on Nickelodeon. I know, but I also knew what Drake and Josh was, so I knew she was in that. And, I knew she was amongst that circle and was obviously super famous. And I had respected her work because after I booked the show, I went and I watched a bunch of it and just got familiar with the tone and what it was. And, dude, it was really cool, man. They were all incredibly welcoming and just really nice. And for her, who's obviously super famous, she made it really easy. She was just really cool, man. Like, there was no, I'm famous and you're the new guy. None of that. She was super cool. And and honestly, I'll be brutally honest, a lot of child actors are not great people. And it's not necessarily even
pampered their whole lives and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. Or kind of crazy parents or whatever it might be. And she was none of that. She was just awesome, man. Like, really kind, really nice, really welcoming, super prepared. I mean, she is in every scene and every minute of that freaking show to the wire, and they dump it on you. And on that show, and really all multi-camera comedies, they're doing live rewrites, like active rewrites, dude, the night before, and literally live. Like, they'll come in and they'll give you an alt line, maybe 4 alt lines, and it's like, okay, hey, you've just gotten these lines the night before to get completely off book and prepared and ready to do in front, again, live. And here, we're going to throw 4 more lines at you. And, she would just crush it every time. So it was really impressive, man. She was a true professional, really good at it, and was just really nice and welcoming. And obviously, because there's a romantic relationship in the show, sometimes that also makes things hard. And it just wasn't. She was just cool. She was really, really awesome. So I have nothing but great things to say about her.
Awesome.
Yeah.
They left the first season on a cliffhanger. Whether or not she's going to choose you or the other guy.
Come on.
You might not be able to talk about it, but do we know what?
Honestly, I wouldn't be able to if I did, but I can tell you honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
I will know very soon.
Fair enough.
Know very soon.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I have a good feeling, but you just never know. And there's also so many things it's her show. It's 100% Carly's show. So it's like, whatever is the funniest for Carly, whatever is going to be the best character development for her. Like, I could see a world where she picks neither of us. I could see a world where she totally picks Wes, and there's a large character arc that ends in heartbreak tragedy, and she learns from that. I could see coming back for 1 episode and it being hey, I can't do this, blah, blah, blah. You never know.
Yeah.
So it just totally depends, man. And I don't know, but I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
This is kind of a personal question, but just one that, other people might have is, when you're on those episodes, you're on Paramount Plus forever.
Yeah.
So are you getting residual checks?
Oh, yes. You do generally get residuals on stuff like that from SAG. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Different.
Which brings up another question. You are union.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Have to be union to do any of those jobs. You can do 2 union jobs without being union, but the third one you have to do for SAG. But yeah, I got in SAG the second I got out there with Criminal Minds. I was like, let's do this. Actually, I got in SAG in Virginia. Yeah. Wow. Did a pilot. I was a featured extra. And this is also what brought me to LA. There's a gentleman named Taylor Hackford, who's one of the most famous directors ever. He was president of the Directors Guild, the DGA, for a long time. His wife is Helen Mirren, who's obviously Helen Mirren, one of the most successful actresses ever. And he was directing a pilot in Virginia Beach called Company Town. And it was a CW pilot that had some pretty good talent and pretty good names in it. And man, we were out in an airfield, and I was at VCU at the time. It was during those 6 months there. And I was in school. I would go to school, do my whole day, and then drive there and do like a 12-hour day of featured extra work, whatever it was. And so I ended up actually, basically, he went through the crowd and just picked the people who he was going to make the featured extras. So this was day one of acting for me. And we got there was about 6 of us, and I'm still friends with some of those people too. And we were in the airfield, and it started raining. And this was a production, bro. This was a Criminal Minds caliber, like, I don't know how much money he had for this pilot, but it was a lot. There were multiple cranes during the rain. Their video village may as well have been in like crystal marble tents. It was just like ridiculous, dude. So much money. And they, in the scene they were shooting, they basically needed somebody to go up on this plane, and Taylor was just, I guess he was making a creative decision, and he wanted to sort of start the scene with like powerful energy and somebody coming up and throwing a beer bottle off this plane, right? And so he was looking around for people, and he didn't have anybody. So he came to the featured extras. Sorry to take a left turn here, but he came to the featured extras, which was me and a couple others. He was like, hey, which one of you guys can climb on this plane right now? And it was soaking wet. Raining, which is like obviously dangerous, and usually they won't let you do that. And his AD was having a heart attack. His AD was like, you can't do this, don't do this, blah blah. And he was like, we need the shot, blah blah blah. Who's gonna do this? And I was like, me. And I think I was the guy to do it there, because it was actually kind of scary. He was like, all right, you go, boom. So I go over there, and they make me sign some waivers about getting hurt and all this stuff. And he was like, and it was so funny, dude, because Taylor looks at me, he's like, are you a member of the union? And I was like, what? He was like, you're not? Okay, good. We're going to Taft-Hartley you. So, okay, sweet. So that was how I became SAG. He put me on the plane, and I had one line throwing this thing off. So technically that was my first job, but it was in Virginia. And I got put in SAG that day.
That's awesome.
Isn't that hilarious?
Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez. Back to that, I mean, that's an interesting story. Back to the residual checks. Is it based on, that's negotiated in your contracts, I assume?
Yes. And so that point being, yes, that and shows like that and Criminal Minds and all of those, you get residuals forever.
Yeah.
Like literally I still make residuals on that show and on Criminal Minds.
And is it like every time the episode airs? Is it just
pretty much? Yeah. And
what about like streaming service? I mean, iCarly subscriptions, do they get? It's
different. And, to be honest with you, so I think it fluctuates on every contract. The problem right now is that SAG is in all kinds of crazy wars with this. So there's there's new media, which new media is this whole umbrella of all kinds of stuff now.
Like in social media influencers.
All of it, all kinds of stuff. So they're basically still negotiating what a proper contract should look like, because Netflix pays people nothing. And I'll say that out loud. They're starting to pay more, and apparently they're starting to do really well. Obviously, they'll pay you if you're worth it. But that's why you see a lot of no-name talent on Netflix, because they're generally not paying a lot. But that paradigm is shifting, and I know that the union is trying to fight against that for new media and big streamers. And so for Paramount Network, I obviously haven't seen any residuals yet. I believe I will, but it's all contractual and it's different, and it won't be anything like Criminal Minds. Like that is like a cable network, foreign sales, like it's just syndicated to the max. Like people who are series regulars on that show make a lot of money. A lot of money. These streamers, it's not the same. No. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's tough.
Very interesting.
But that's changing. We'll see where it all ends up.
Cool. We're closing in on the end here, but just a few like basic questions. What's like your favorite movie that you pull from in your own acting, and maybe your favorite actor, favorite director?
Favorite movie, favorite actor, favorite director. I'll give you my favorite show first, which is the most definitive one, which is True Detective Season 1, for sure. In my opinion, best show, best season of television ever made, by far. Favorite movie, this is a silly one. People hate this answer, but I think it's awesome. It's Troy.
I don't think I've seen that.
Really? With Brad Pitt? Oh, dude, it's so good. But more importantly, so the movie is really good. It's a little ridiculous, but it's really good. And not only is it fun, and for me, it's my favorite movie because it was the only movie I ever saw in the theaters with my dad. My dad was always overseas, so it just kind of has like sentimental value for me. Mm-hmm. But also, like that was a part of it. Like I was infatuated with war, which is a little weird growing up, obviously, but doing the stuff I told you. Yeah. So I liked war movies, Troy being one of them, and so seeing that like always made me want to do that and replicate that and be an actor. But actually seeing it and like the heart of what that movie is about actually speaks volumes to me and to most people who are in the industry. industry, which is the whole core theme of that is greatness versus family. That's it. It's destiny. Like Brad Pitt plays Achilles, and the entire story of Achilles, which is obviously a book and written through it, is literally greatness versus family. It's like if he goes, he's going to be the most famous, well-known person forever. He'll be the greatest warrior of all time, but he's going to die. And then he meets Perseus, the woman, and it's like, oh God, what do I do? If I don't go and I stay with her, no one will ever know his name, which is literally the quote, but he'll live a happy life. And so it's like, for him, does he want this destiny that will shape the world, or does he want this peaceful life where he'll live forever? It's freaking deep stuff, dude. And when you apply that to like modern day stuff, where it's not necessarily family versus greatness, but it's kind of like family versus purpose. And it's like, well, for me in my life, it's like, okay, how quick until I want to be somewhere else and out of Los Angeles with Kirsten and my family? Can we do that in LA? And that's just every male, every female, people will deal with that with your spouse all the time out there, where it's not necessarily that, you know what I'm saying, like greatness be family, but it's that sort of classic conundrum of like, is this worth it? And Troy, to me, it does a great job of like painting that picture for him, where like he learns the lesson a little bit too late, and it's tragic, but also loving and cool. And so it's a good movie, man. Really good script too. Favorite actor, Matthew McConaughey. Yeah. 100%, dude. If I could have anybody's career, it'd be Matthew McConaughey's, because he just started out with such ridiculous, fun romantic comedies.
Yeah.
Those are so fun, dude. Romantic comedies. If you can make a living doing romantic comedies, you're a lucky actor. But then he transitioned into such amazing, brilliant work, where he was like, guys, I'm more than this ridiculous hunk who says, all right. And he did True Detective. Clinic on acting, dude. Clinic on writing, clinic on everything. Crushed that. Dallas Buyers Club. Went and did that afterwards. Just, dude, what an amazing career that guy's had. So he's probably my favorite actor. I say that pretty definitively. Everybody always gives like Daniel Day-Lewis or Leo, and like, yes, that's super respectful and super respectable, and those guys are truly brilliant. But yeah, in terms of like a fun career, and I'm like, yeah. McConaughey. And then what was the last one?
Favorite director?
Ooh, favorite director. That's a good one. There's a lot of really talented directors, and this is kind of a blanket answer, but Scorsese's probably my favorite director. Dude, he doesn't make anything bad. Like, literally, name me a bad Martin Scorsese movie.
Yeah.
You can't do it. Most of the greats are like, oh yeah, they had that one in like film school, and it was just like, all right, Scorsese doesn't have anything bad.
You mentioned, do you want to have your family in California?
Yeah.
Do you see potential for bringing it back here to Virginia Beach and having a successful film, TV career here? Because I know totally. Like Pharrell is from here, and Pharrell has said that he wants to make Virginia Beach a hub. It's kind of hard to do with the jets. Yes, man.
Short answer is absolutely. My goal is to be bi-coastal within the next 2 or 3 years. So to own property here and hopefully own property out there, but the California market is insane.
Yeah.
So at least be staying out there and renting and owning a place here and slowly building that up. And then hopefully 6 to 10 year plan, if you will, is to, be back here full time, flying to Los Angeles, flying wherever work brings you, ATL, New Zealand, and making your hub here. And yes, ultimately, I would like my production company to be based out of Virginia and be hopefully operating, doing business here, shooting in Oklahoma where the rebates are out of control, shooting here, shooting in ATL. And the jets make it very difficult. It is possible to shoot in Virginia Beach. It would be immensely hard, but it is possible.
Yeah.
But shooting outside of VB where there's no jets, there are cool locations in Virginia that I think are pretty unexplored.
One person who is from Virginia Beach has kind of gone and done similar things, not acting, but directing, and has come back and made Virginia Beach his hub is Derek Port. And I have, looked up to Derek Port as kind of a lifestyle that I would like to live. And
100%.
I think he's been successful at it. So it's definitely possible to do.
100%, dude. Yeah. He's really awesome. All his films are great. And I think he's clearly on the rise right now. It is possible. He shows it. A lot of people show it. A little different from directing and acting. Yeah. Because it's not as frequent of like, you got to be in this room to audition. Or you got to be in this room to meet this person. Now, when you're at his level, he's doing it at the highest level. So when you're there, he is probably taking 5-6 meetings a day, but for COVID, you're Zooming them. So yeah, you can be in Virginia Beach and crush it, man. And like that is definitely my long-term goal for sure. I would like, in my perfect dream world, to open I want our production company to be based here. And in the perfect world, we would be an A24 caliber kind of, 20 years down the road plan of, hey, that's operating fully out of Virginia Beach.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you can do it because I want a job.
You be the first guy, bro. You be the first guy.
Thank you. And hey, thanks for stopping by and doing this. I appreciate it.
Of course, man. Dude, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure.